How's it
Huh?
going?
It's nice to see you.
You too, again.
Ooh,
For
yeah.
anyone who saw us on here very briefly last night, we were checking something.
Just trying to work out everything before we go on.
Exactly. How was your Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday's been good. I've been spending some time restocking, getting items ready to go to stores. So a lot of tagging, a lot of bagging, but it's always worth it.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, Bridget. Nice to see you. Hey, Sarah. Hi. Hi, Monica.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on in. I'll let people keep joining. Hey, Holly. Love to see everybody here. I'd love to know where you're joining us from if you want to put in the comments. Welcome to another buyer seller hotline. We're going to be chatting about topics in the world of vintage, secondhand, and bringing buyers and sellers together to trade ideas, trade advice, better understand each other, share opinions. We love to hear opinions. I'm Kristina from the Vintage Seeker, and today we are talking rag houses. So maybe people have heard the term before, maybe they haven't, but my lovely guest Claudia and I are going to be talking about what they are and what happens inside and how they're used to get vintage out into the public. And later we'll be talking a little bit about the rag house scene as a seller too. So Claudia's been doing this for about 10 years now, has lots of insight to share. You're a vintage picker and a reseller and the owner of Cloud Girl Vintage in Toronto, vintage fashion brand. And I will get Claudia to introduce herself more fully in a minute. But for those who are just joining us, say hi in the comments. Tell us where you're from. And if this is your first time joining us, this is not just a conversation between me and Claudia. It involves everybody in the chat as well. We want to hear you. We want to hear your questions, your comments. Let's hear you participate. You can ask questions about rag houses. There's no bad questions ever. You can feel free to leave your comments as well when we're talking. So if you're a seller, this is also a chance to let buyers know about your own insights and to ask questions of Claudia too. So I will introduce myself a little bit more and then Claudia will, and we will kind of get right into it. So if you've just joined us, again, love to know where you are joining us from. I'm Kristina Urquhart. I'm the publisher of The Vintage Seeker. And I'm an indie media publisher. I am helping secondhand vendors reach shoppers. I've been a business editor for about 20 years, just under 20 years now, I guess, and writing about all kinds of niche communities. And now I'm writing about vintage and antiques, my love. So you can find the Vintage Seeker here on Instagram and Facebook, of course, but more importantly on my website. That's where I'm producing a ton of content. Newsletters. We have a free directory that you can join. It's called the Shop Secondhand Directory. Sellers can list their businesses there. Buyers can see more than 3,500 vintage and secondhand shops and services across Canada and the US. There's an events calendar on there. If you haven't checked it out, do that. Hey from Dartmouth. Hey Hamilton. Nice to see you here. Love getting people from all over. If you are a vendor, make sure to list your business there. I recently also relaunched our memberships with a number of ways for consumers and vendors to participate. Vendors who are looking to tap into a network of support also have the option to join the Vintage Sellers community, which is a wonderful space to trade knowledge and level up skills for sellers. I also offer one-to-one shop consultations to chat a little bit about business stuff. You can find all that info on my link in bio and in my pin post. So Claudia,
Hello.
let's get to you. I want to talk about
Okay.
you. That's enough about me.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for being game to do this. Welcome.
Yeah,
Tell
no
us
problem.
tell us more about you. Tell us about Cloud Girl Vintage. Where you
Oh,
sell, what do you sell?
okay, where to start? So, hi, everybody. I'm Claudia. I'm the owner of Cloud Girl Vintage. We have been selling and finding amazing secondhand finds. It'll be 6 years this November. I can't believe how fast time flies. So, I am not just a vintage seller, but I'm also a picker as well. I go into, and we'll get more into this later, these facilities where I save secondhand pieces and I give them a new life. I do story sales every Tuesday and Thursday on my Instagram. That's the only way that you can purchase with me online currently. We ship globally. We have a great shipping system. And then for anyone local, we have 6 locations that we stock across Ontario and Montreal, from boho tchotchkes to bazaar to 2 different era vintage locations. in a location in Montreal that gets new inventory every single week. And you can mostly find me here on Instagram. I have other platforms, but this is where I'm most active. People, they come for the clothes and they stay for the content. So, yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Yes, we will talk a little bit about your content. It's awesome. If anybody doesn't follow Claudia already, definitely make sure you do that after this. Don't leave us right now because we have a lot to talk about. Hey to everybody who's just joined in the comments. It's great to see you here. I'd love to know where the name Cloud Girl came from. Like, where'd you come up with that?
Surprisingly, a lot of people actually realize this. I feel like a couple months, couple years after they learn, but it's a play on my name. So my name is Claudia. So it's like kind of a play
Ah,
on Cloud and Claudia, but also it's kind of universal because I feel anyone can be a cloud girl. Like as soon as you make a purchase, you automatically become a cloud girl. So it's kind of like connecting with the odds, like me connecting with the audience. So, and I was told at first it was too feminine, but I was like, well, what's stopping anybody from being a cloud girl? Mom, dad, pets, anyone can be a cloud girl.
absolutely. I think there's multi layers to it because you're also kind of like fulfilling the dream, you know? You're fulfilling your own dream, you're fulfilling others' dreams. The cloud thing, it's good. It works.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. If you're just joining us, jump in with your questions and comments throughout our chat. Love to hear from shoppers, love to hear from collectors, vendors, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Monica says you're cutting in and out. I
Oh,
haven't heard that myself too much, but thanks for letting us know, Monica. Just check
okay, awesome on
Claudia's.
data. So maybe that will help.
Okay. Okay. Let's try
Let me
that.
know.
Hopefully that works. I will post this to YouTube, which I know doesn't help with the audio, but I will eventually get a transcript on my website too. So thanks, Bridget. You can hear Claudia. Okay, awesome. Monica, if you can't hear it all, I will post a written transcript at some point. Just got to get it put together. So our topic today, somehow we've already spent 10 minutes like nattering. Rag houses. We are going to talk about general interest in consumer side first, and then move into kind of the big picture trends and get to the selling part a little later on. So, for the people on the call who might not be familiar, or people who are watching this later who might not be familiar, give us the basics. What is a rag house? What happens there?
So, a rag house is kind of a middleman to where our clothing goes. So, usually, when we have items that we want to give away, we usually donate them to thrift store. But thrift stores can only handle so much at any time, just like any retailer, they constantly have turning over their inventory. So, these items usually end up at these rag, which are these sorting facilities where they have bales of clothing from different secondhand locations where they break them open, they sort the items, and they end up baling them and sending them to third party markets across like Africa and South America. And surprisingly, there are places where, with the right knowledge and the right finesse, you are able to go into one and see where your clothing goes. And thankfully, I have been in that position to have access to these places.
Yeah. So importantly, not open to the public, I think, is
Not
when we're talking about this.
no. There,
Yeah.
I think from my knowledge, there's only one that's kind of like open, but you need to like know about it. They're very secretive. Like it's very hush hush. But
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure in order to access them, you need a business license. I have one, so I'm pretty sure you need a business license in order to access them.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for the overview. How is it different from a thrift store? And I just want to, I mean, everybody knows what a thrift store is, obviously, but I want to talk a little bit about the fact that thrift stores actually have their own, essentially, like kind of warehouses in the back of their store. How is this different from what's happening there?
So the main way that I can describe it is when I was in Montreal recently, they have the Goodwill bins where they bring the stuff out in a bin and go through it. But in the back, like I saw this kind of like this door, so I kind of like peeked through. I was curious, and the back kind of looks like a rag house where these rag houses, it's these large bales, they're about 1,000 pounds each, and it's this warehouse facility. So it's not like a brick and mortar retailer or a an actual store, because it's more of like a warehouse. So they open these bales and there's a lot of machinery, and you're going through a lot of inventory at once, whether you're on a line or you're on the floor going through bins, and you're trying to get large amounts of inventory. So this isn't the type of place where, when you go thrifting and you only see one thing, you can take one thing. At a
Mhm.
you have to be picking weight, and some places even have a minimum of how much you must take per day. I think we can maybe touch on that a little bit later, but it's solely a place where you can buy secondhand clothing in bulk, like a wholesale store almost, compared to a thrift store, which is more piece by piece.
Right. Got it. Thank you. And then the bins. People also hear about the bins. Can we define kind of like where that falls in the chain too?
So the bins, I'd say, would be the closest thing to like a publicly accessible rag house. I've been to one only, so this was like a very firsthand experience, but it's the stuff almost like from the bales, like in the way that the rags is, and then they put them in these bins and they wheel them out, and you can go through them, and it's all in weight as well, which is very similar to a rag house. So if you have a Goodwill bin near you, you're basically at a rag house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So yes, they're an important kind of behind the scenes supplier in the circular economy, right? They're sorting secondhand textiles. They're especially, after they've been donated, and we'll talk a little bit more about that whole chain a little bit later. Word of mouth is like pretty big when it comes to these places. You said that kind of. Call it a rag house because the clothing's called rags. I mean, that's how people refer to clothing, but also they're literally turned into rags in some cases, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. And so sellers like Claudia are using these rag houses to source inventory and hand pick items, right?
Mhm.
And she mentioned that they are wholesale only. So most people, the average person doesn't even know that these places exist, right?
Oh,
So
definitely. It's very, very secretive, but it's
yeah,
also very important as well.
yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about that too. So for everybody who's here on the call right now, I'd love to hear from you if you had any preconceived notions about rag houses and what you've heard already, and if it's kind of aligned with what you thought. So Claudia, we call you a vintage picker. Share with us what that means.
So picking, I feel, kind of has a definition of like you going in to a place and picking. I feel like anyone can be labeled a picker. I feel like it's a title that you gain over time when you're turning over a lot of inventory. But I feel like at the end of the day, I feel like can be labeled as a picker going into any sort of secondhand place and finding things. Then I feel like you are considered a picker in any type of kind of secondhand field.
Hmm. Okay, awesome. Monica, thanks for the question. She's asking you, Claudia, if you get
Okay.
inventory from people that walk in and sell you their vintage items.
Oh, all the time, all the time. And I'm always very open, but it really depends on the items. I always like to go through, but for the most part, I mostly just get everything from the rag houses, and then I'll go to the occasional garage sale, estate sale. But yeah, on the person, absolutely.
Yeah, and they would mostly, in your case anyway, have to do that at a market, right? Because your locations, they're booths, so you're not there all the time for people to come in and bring their stuff.
Yeah, I usually recommend like sending photos first, and I can get a feel of like what you have, and then we can have a discussion. And if there has to be another date up and we actually like seal through, then that's always a possibility, and it does happen all the time.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Monica. Great question. How did you first get into going to these places, and kind
Ah.
of like how did you make them your business model, I guess?
So I was running a business previously with a couple of business partners, and we found out about them through another person that was also in the industry. Like I find when you're kind of in the game, you kind of end up learning down the grapevine, and then once you have one, then you can kind of get the ball rolling. So like we found out friend, and then we started going. And then when I started my business, I was like, this is the best model because you are getting inventory at a way lower cost. You can get a lot of inventory at once, and you don't have like I get really like dizzy and like disoriented in thrift stores. And I find this is like a little bit easier. Like when you're on a line, it's a conveyor belt where once they open the bales, the items go through before they get sorted. It's like all the items are coming to you. So instead of having to go through rack after rack, you just have all these items coming down a conveyor belt for you to just grab and put in. So it's more time efficient, it's cost efficient, and I do find that the quality of the items is a lot higher because I don't know, I never get lucky at the thrift store. I'm like that one person who, I don't know, my horseshoe was upside down whenever I go to the thrift store. But at the rags, it's a different story.
Yeah. Okay, so clarify for me then, because you're talking about the conveyor belt part, but you're also often, filming on the floor, like where there are large piles of clothing, for lack of a better word. I mean, are you doing both, or what happens?
So I have a partner that I pick with as well. There's two of us, and we only let these two people in. They don't like a lot of people coming in. So usually me and this person will split up. So I usually take the line. It's where I'm the strongest because you need to be really fast and you need to kind of know pieces right away without even having to look at the tags. Like littlest glimmer of the line is a conveyor belt. So when they have the bales, they take them on a forklift and they put them onto this metal platform that raises. Then they open up the bale and all the items come out. So you're going through the items unsorted before they get sorted their categories, and then that's when the floor comes in and the bins come in,
Okay.
where my partner will go through those bins, and you have to go through every single item you want to bottom, and then you take what you need, you put it back, and you put it back in the spot that it came from. So the line is kind of like everything's coming to you unsorted, and then the bins are the sorted items that are free to go through before they get bailed up to go to their next home.
Their next destination. Yeah, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about those homes and what those homes are. Okay, so like on the lines, like I don't want to say first line of defense because you're not defending anything, but you're like you get first pick. You get first pick, right? So that's cool.
Yeah, on the line though, like when it comes, like you do get first pick, but there are people who are priority who are closer.
Yeah.
So in a lot of these rag houses, the closer you are to the front of the bale, the more money you're usually spending.
Okay.
And this is what a lot of larger vintage stores do. Like anyone with a very large location, a lot of them have been in these locations for honestly before I've even been born, maybe even before some of you have been born, and they are able to spend a lot and turn over a lot. So the closer you are, the more that you spend, and then you're kind of them like I'm second, third line. So I'm thankful for my spot, and that's kind of an interesting fact. Is the more you pay, the longer you're there, the closer
Yeah,
you get to the
that
front,
is really interesting.
the better
And then
chance.
there's
Yeah.
also people inside who are, you talked about a little bit about grading, like looking at the quality of the clothing, and they're, correct me if I'm wrong, working for the rag house essentially. They come after you and they're sorting kind of what you haven't already picked into the piles?
So in a rag house, it's almost like there are two different businesses running at the same time.
Okay.
So the first business is like the actual like textile recycling business. So there are employees who work there, and they're the ones who are opening the mail. They're the ones sorting the items. They're the ones picking them up. They're the ones getting the items that can no longer be sold into legitimate rags. Those are the employees, and then you as a business owner is coming in as almost like an independent contractor or like a wholesaler. So you're coming in and you're working around these employees and you're working around the business, and they will sell to you. And usually that's a whole other business in itself. So it's like
Mhm.
everyone's kind of working together, but there's like groups. It's like you and everyone who is an actual employee of the business.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing. I mean, I know when I was obviously, I've been shopping vintage for a long time, but when I actually started to understand the industry and like the various like levels and the people selling to who, and like there's all different, it's like this crazy web. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting because I can't think of another industry that's quite like that. It's just sellers buying from other sellers, sellers buying from this place. This rag has two things going. Like yeah, it's really interesting. Thanks for
There's a
sharing
big
all this.
old onion. Vintage is just
Yeah,
one onion at the end of the day. There are so many
yeah.
layers to it.
So set the scene. The very first time you walked into one, like, what were your impressions?
Oh, and it's taken me a while to like enjoy the experience because it's, you have to get there very early. A lot of them will open at 5 or 6 or 7 in the morning. So already really tired. And they're these big warehouses. They are a little dirty and they're a little dusty, and it's a lot of physical labor. And I'm like, whoa, like it's like a whole other world. And especially when you do one for the first time and you don't know how to like navigate the space, it can be very overwhelming. And I remember feeling very overwhelmed trying to get the hang of it. But then, over time you get better and you find a place that for you and your business, and then you get more comfortable. But it's honestly a very overwhelming experience at
Yeah.
first, the first time you go.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there's machinery, there's, I'm sure, all kinds of smells and
Yeah,
sounds and
is
things
it
to hit the
full?
senses. Yeah.
It's so many different things going on at once. You really got to be prepared.
Your mom comes with you sometimes, right?
She does. She loves it. And honestly, I think they like her there more than I do. And the one interesting thing about her coming with me is my mom was like around my in the 70s, and she remembers wearing a lot of that stuff that I feel like so sought after, or like knows certain like movies or celebrities that I don't. She'll be like, oh, there's this one t-shirt in particular is for the movie Field of Dreams, and my mom found it. I was like, I don't know what this t-shirt is. And she's like, it's Field of Dreams, everyone's seen that. And I was like, I think this is before my time. So she adds a really interesting perspective when it comes to the pieces that she finds. She's really good. She's
Yeah.
really good. I've shown her the ways, and I've had to learn as well, but she's so good at it, and I love having her with me. She's who got me into it, so why not bring
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. I mean, did she saw your workplace for the first time? Like, what did she like? Did she have an impression when she walked in?
I think she was honestly overwhelmed as well
Yeah,
because it's a whole experience. It's very just like you really take a step back when you see
yeah.
everything going on at once. But like the same, we both just kept going and getting into it and coming up with a system. And now she loves it. And like I said, I think the people who work there, they love her more than they love me.
That's so fun. I love it. Bridget loves that your mom goes with you. Holly at Elizabeth O Vintage. Anytime we share about our reg house experiences, we get so many questions. I don't know if it's people realizing that it's really hard, dirty work, that it's very overstimulating. Also, so fun. Yes. Holly is in Penticton, BC, and she goes out to Vancouver. Correct me if I'm wrong, right, Holly, for your regs? Monica's asking, do all the items you sell go through a thorough cleaning process before you sell them? That's a really good question. Thanks,
Yes,
Monica.
I do a lot of laundry. I don't think anyone wants to see my bill, but everything that can be cleaned will be cleaned. So we put everything in the washer, everything in the dryer. If it needs to be stain treated, we stain treat everything. We can't it. We will dye it. My mom is really good at dye. So we even do like mama's custom tie dyes where items that are too stained, we'll tie dye them and give them another life. And then at kind of can't clean, we'll either steam clean it, we have a steamer, or we'll take it to a dry cleaner. I think when you're sourcing secondhand clothing, if it can be cleaned, it should be cleaned. And I stand by
Yeah.
that.
And if it's not, the buyer should know about it and the price should reflect that too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so Claudia, one of the things you do is you sometimes will like show people the stuff that you found, like you will have it right there on the floor. Do people like see it and then want it right away before you've even done anything to it?
Oh, absolutely. So when I do this on the Find series, everything's in like real time. So if you see an item, you can claim it from me right away. Like it's almost like live shopping in a way.
Hmm.
And like yesterday I had this cat t-shirt. It had all of these different cats doing different things. The print was on the back, and I had like 7 messages right away. And when it comes to certain things, I always do let people know if there is something wrong with the item, it affects the price on it. But people are fairly open and they'll grab it right away if it aligns with what they want. And some days are better than others. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, that is fun. As a buyer, that's like the ultimate thrill, like to feel like you got it like before it's even gone onto your shelf, like getting it from the source.
Oh, it's sometimes what keeps me going through the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like your social, you do a great job sharing notes from the floor. What's a typical day like? So you told me yesterday when we were prepping for this that you go 2 days a week. What's like a
Ew.
typical day? You mentioned you're there early.
So my days have changed a little bit. I used to do a lot more like wholesale, like from business to business, but now I have a bunch of rack locations. So my day has kind of changed. I usually try to get there around like 7:10, 7:15. They officially start at 7:30. So I go in, I try to some bins, get a little like start on the day. You never know what's been like turned from the previous day. So I'll go through the bins and then I'll head on the line. When my mom comes with me, she'll like go through the bins. The partner that's with me go through the bins, and we stay on that until first break. So there's a first break and a lunch. Sometimes they have another 15, but it varies. So I'll stay on the line, and then I'll take the breaks. That's when I start making a little bit of content to try to roll that in, and then now that I need a lot more inventory, I stay on the line a little bit longer. Usually they start to break purses out, so I'll go through that. And then once I start to notice it's either drying up or it's getting close to around like 11, that's when I start to grade everything. And grading is basically just like going over everything for flaws, stains, items for my story sale. And that usually takes about 45 minutes, and then we bag everything. I take photos for the story sale, a little bit more content on the story, and then I cash out and usually leave between 12 to 1:30, 2 o'clock. It really depends on like what's the day like, but I've had to stay a bit later because now I need so much more inventory. So
Yeah, you've got
it's
like
full
six
day.
locations to fill.
Yeah, 6 locations to fill, and they're all hungry, so I got to keep them fed.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, I mean, you are continuously looking at clothing. They're opening bales all the time. They're open, correct me if I'm wrong, every day, right? Or are
Every
they
day
open?
from open to
This
close.
is one rag house, and there's many, in Canada and the US, they're all over the place. I'm just trying to get people on the call to understand like the volume of what is coming through there, like the amount of clothing that you see on a daily basis, and you're not even there every day.
No, I've never seen a day where they haven't had anything to go through. And this
Hmm.
is thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of clothing that are coming through this place. And as pickers, as resellers, I think we only take, even the largest person only takes maybe 1% max of what's going through there that meets the criteria of like what their store has to offer. And they're all over the place. They're in the States, they're in Canada, and there's never a dry day. And I think that really, to me, shows like how much of an issue it is when it comes to our clothing problem and how much clothing is actually out there that just has sometimes nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I mean, I think for anybody just joining us, just since we're already at 7:30 my time, we are in our kind of buyer segment. We're talking a little bit about what happens in a rag house. We're going to move into access, talking a little bit about sustainability, and then vendor insights we'll finish off. So, Claudia kind of talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but rag houses are kind of like the next stop after the bins, right? They're your stuff gets donated to the thrift store and then it maybe gets sold there, maybe doesn't, maybe goes to the bins or goes directly to a rag house. They're kind of like the last stop before landfill, before they get recycled. And without them, you're saying, people who are picking are maybe taking 1%. So cumulatively, however many pickers are in there, maybe they're taking, I don't know, 10-20% of the items that are in there. That's like another 80% of stuff, things that have to like, go somewhere after all this. What happens to, do you know what happens to the clothing that doesn't get picked by you?
I don't know too much because I try not to ask too many questions,
That's fair.
but from my understanding, I think it's changed a bit in the past couple of years because they used to only sell bales of like a specific item. So it was like poly blouses or like cotton blouses or like men's pants or baby clothes. But I think I think in the certain countries that the clothing ends up in, I'm pretty sure they end up in these markets like in Africa and South America where they like splay them out on a table and then people can pick them. I think they're looking now for higher quality pieces called premium, which is items that have tags, items that aren't stained, items that are, I think, high in demand. So I think that's what a lot of rag houses are focusing on is more of that premium, but I'm pretty sure it's like they sell that premium at these markets in like South America, Africa, but I don't know everything. That's all I honestly know.
Yeah, I mean, I can add a little bit to that. Like, generally, you talked a little bit about how clothes are separated into these categories, right? And some are for resale, so that will be pickers like you. Wholesalers will also come and collect their own, like, curated bundles, essentially, that they'll then bale up and sell to people. So it's like we were talking earlier about the different levels, like multiple bales at different places. Sometimes the garments are used or they're ground down and used for manufacturing rags. So that's like where the rag thing comes from. And then yes, they're exported overseas, and those textiles are going to Kenya, Ghana, Chile, and those countries rely on the exports. They have an industry, like you were just talking about. They are selling secondhand clothing. But the problem is, of course, countries like Canada and the US and England and other countries in the global north are sending so much of this stuff, and the quality is so poor now. Like they're looking for premium for good reason because it's not going to fall apart in 5 seconds, right?
Oh
But we're
yeah.
sending them all to Shein and Timu and all this stuff, right? It's all getting boxed up and going there. And those vendors either can't sell it because it's so bad, or the volume is just so high that they also just can't go through it. And then it's winding up in their landfills. And I'm sure anybody who's on the call, if you haven't seen them, check it out, the photos of what it looks like on the beaches in some of these places where the clothing kind of spills out of the landfill. It's quite upsetting to witness. So if anybody has questions, who's on the call right now, comments about kind of like the chain of events of what happens to our unwanted clothing or the aftermarket, definitely drop it in the comments. We'd love to know, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Um, what do most buyers not realize about what sellers have to do in these places to source? Like, what is the biggest misconception about rag houses?
Well, I think just overall, the biggest misconception, I think especially when it comes pricing is, why does this t-shirt or why does this item cost the way it does? And at least from my perspective, when I go into a rag house, when I'm sourcing, it does take a lot of energy. You need to know what to look for. A lot of weight, there's a lot of pressure on you. The environment can be a little chaotic from all the machinery. Sometimes there's no sea. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. So it's like you're working a whole day reflect that, I think, into your price. So when I charge a certain price, it reflects the time and effort that it takes to actually find these pieces. And you do deserve to make a profit on your time when you're going into this dangerous environment. It is dangerous. There's broken glass and knives. You never know what or happen. And I think that your prices and your should reflect on that well, and it's not for the faint of heart. It is a long day, and there's also kind of a relationship that you do need to build with the owners as well. There's kind of a culture that goes into being at the regs. Like you want to help them because when you help them, they help you, and everything needs to be put in a certain place. These are things that you have to like pick up over a certain time. I think that's one of the reasons also why they don't like having people coming in is because they want people they can trust and they want people that will work with them and won't kind of muddle the business that's going on. Like you're a guest in their house, and it's a lot, in a sense, more structured than it is at a rag house in that way. And if you're not spending enough money, or if they don't like you, they'll kick you out and you have to go find a new place, and it can happen for any reason at any time with no notice. Like it's a little bit lawless.
Yeah, yeah, volatile, definitely. Holly at Elizabeth was saying the thought that that vintage sellers are taking from these facilities and then but then send goods to other countries that are in need, how that isn't true. Would love your thoughts on that. So yes, the idea that sellers are snapping up clothing that other people from low income, from marginalized groups, that they need this clothing. That's a common argument that's
Yeah,
online.
but these items that I'm going for are items that have already been passed on the
Hmm.
thrift store. So the
Yeah.
items that I'm getting in particular are items that nobody wanted, that nobody claimed. I get the items after anybody at the thrift store has access to them. So, or anyone who does need them, they have first picks over me. And a lot of those items I don't feel people are going for. Like when I think of people who need clothing, they need winter coats, and they need, snow pants, and they need warm clothing or suits for interviews. And I'm not taking those pieces. And I think those pieces should be accessible to the people who need them, but they have first picks over those suits when they enter a value village, when they enter a Goodwill before I do. I get all the suits that the people who were there, they didn't want those suits for whatever reason. And the clothing that I'm taking is, their bikinis. I sell a lot of Y2K clothing right now. It's the most in demanded for me. So I'm selling spaghetti strap tank tops and Hollister t-shirts, and those are things that I don't always feel are the most high on the list. And that's why personally I don't like to thrift, because it still leaves those pieces to the people who do need them.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly that side of it, the local people who need them, and then there's also the people on the other end who get, for lack of a better word, like the stuff that nobody here want, like the stuff that nobody here took, right? And I think we talked a little bit earlier about the volume of what is going. So there's no shortage of choice per se. So I think that that's important. The other thing that most people don't know is that when a thrift store gets its donations from, the clothing donation bins that you put your clothes into when you're cleaning out your closet or you're dropping off at the back of Value Village, on average, only 25% of the items that a thrift store receives ever make it to the floor that are ever seen by the public. And that's how much stuff there is that they can't put on the floor. And the rest of that stuff is going to places like where Claudia is. So thank you for that, Holly. I appreciate that comment. If anybody else has any questions, definitely chime in. You talked a little bit about how physical the work is, the toll that it takes. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, you're wearing masks when you're there, or like,
Yeah,
what do you have to do?
so technically you don't have to, but it is recommended. There's a lot of dust, fibers, dirt, smells. I've smelt and seen things that I don't even want to think about right now, let alone ever. So, you always want to take precautions. So I wear a dust mask every single time I go in, especially when you're going through bins or you're on the line and you're facing a lot of stuff. Then some people wear gloves as well. Like in the winter, I wear them because it can get cold, but people wear gardening gloves, or, like kind of um like construction-y kind of gloves, lighter ones, because you don't know what's on things. Like if you are picking with your bare hands, please don't touch your eyes. I don't think, regardless if you even go to a value village or a yard sale, just don't touch your face while you're anywhere. But there, I just find you have to really be aware of everything going on. There are forklifts, there are people, there's heavy machinery, there's large bales. Bales can fall over, they're thousands of pounds. You just need to be very aware of your surroundings. And the more you go, the more careful you are. There are sometimes wires sticking out of bales that they wrap them in. You can cut your legs on them. It's always best to, be safe and take precautions in any way you can all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, hazards on the job. And yes, thank you for pointing out wash everything that you ever buy
Please
anywhere, new or
wash
used.
even new clothing. You
New or
don't
used,
know.
there's stuff on there. You would be surprised what's on new clothing too. So yes,
Wash it
Bridget.
all.
Yeah, we won't talk about the things you've seen, but like
No.
use your imaginations, everyone. If you can dream it, she's seen it, I'm sure. Bridget says it's really been really interesting to hear how the day is broken down again. Thanks so much for your insight, Claudia.
Yeah,
And
no
she's
problem.
asking, did you mention how it's priced when you buy it at the end? We did not.
So there are two different ways that this usually works. There's places that have limits, like a limit that you need to pay, and then there are places that don't. So when you have a limit, usually they want you to take anywhere between 50 to 100 pounds a day. And you have to take this weight if you want to go. If you don't take the weight, there's someone else, I promise you, who is going to. So, and it also depends on how much they're charging. It can range between, I'd say, it used to be between 5 and 7 pounds. Now, due to inflation, it can be anywhere from 8 to 10. I've even seen places as high as $15 per pound. And some places they want you to usually take a minimum of 50 pounds. They don't want you taking only two or three things. Like every place will usually want you to pick about 40 to 50 pounds per day. That's pretty standard. It's actually pretty doable. But like when you have a line and you're at the front of the line and you really want good pieces and your business relies on that, then it can be 100 pounds, $10 a pound. I've even seen places where it's 25 to 30 pounds and they want 13 to $15 a pound. And if you've been there for a long time, maybe they make a deal with you, but I'd say the average is like 50 to 100 pounds, 10 pounds a day. And then sometimes pieces will be 10 to 12 to $20 per piece. And that'll be something like a heavy fur coat or like, I don't know, like a giant overalls or something like that.
Okay. Just so people can visualize when you're saying 50 pounds of clothing, how many pieces roughly is that?
It depends on what you're picking. So I'd say like three t-shirts is in 1 pound, or like nightgowns is like you can get 15 nightgowns for a pound.
Hmm.
You can probably get maybe one pair of jeans for a single pound. Like a fur coat will be between 2 to 4 pounds,
Okay,
if that
awesome. Yeah,
visual
no, it's helpful.
a
It's
little
always
bit.
helpful to like when we're talking big numbers to be like, let's try and make this
Break it down.
something imaginable. Yes. Thank you so much. So you've been very open tonight. Thank you very much.
No
You've
problem.
been open online about sharing your experiences in rag houses, sharing from the inside what's going on the floor. Did that ruffle some feathers at the beginning? And why do you think the space is the secret way that it is?
This is the golden question at the end of the day, and it obviously does. There are people that are in the industry who they don't want people coming in. They want the best stuff for themselves, and also I think, with the way that the culture is and the flow is, you don't want bad eggs and people it can be like that. There are people who are disrespectful, there are people who steal, there are people who do all sorts of things. And I don't think anyone, would want that within their environment. And I think we were talking about this yesterday, where it's like, this is one of the only industries that is gate kept in that way. Like you were saying that a lot of like firsthand clothing, they the same suppliers. And sometimes in the secondhand world, we do as well. But I think, when you have that secret spot, that golden ticket, a lot of people do come to that place where they're like, well, I don't want other people to have the golden ticket too. Maybe, in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, there were 5 people who got in. He didn't invite every single child to go into the chocolate factory at the end of the day. And, the ones who end up making are the ones who really reap the rewards. And, I personally wish that this was more accessible and there were more places open to the public. But going back to safety, it is a liability where, people who don't understand this can get hurt and can get injured. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants a lawsuit. So
Yeah.
many different layers to why that is the way it is, and I see both sides, but I do like to share things as much as I can, because I do think that it is a very important part to a very serious problem that we have, which is our overconsumption of clothing
Yeah,
within
absolutely.
in our
And
world.
one of the things that you mentioned last night on our little practice call is that I want to make sure we touch on is the fact that there is something for everyone when you're in there. Talk a little bit about that.
So every store, anyone who resells has their own vibe and the things that they get attracted to. You know, there are people who like t-shirts, and there are so many different t-shirts out there, and there are people who like really old rock t-shirts, and there are people who like, more like they like animal t-shirts, or people who, they like Y2K vintage. And with how much clothing there is out there, and I think it's always really hard to visualize how much clothing there truly is. There is a little bit of something for everyone, and I think it really depends on what you're looking for and what you like and what resonates with your customers and your audience. And once you have that figured out, then I don't feel like there's a lot of competition because everyone is so different. We might sell similar things, but I don't think every single person is going to sell the exact same thing. And as long as you can carve a place for yourself that shows, your inventory, then I think we can all have a place to eat at the table when it comes to reselling clothing. And the most important thing is that we're keeping that clothing in circulation. We don't want to be throwing this clothing out. We don't want the clothing to go to waste if it means that people have to keep reselling and turning the clothing over. You sell it to someone, they don't want to wear it, and then it ends up with another person. As long as these pieces of clothing keep going, that's the most important, I think, thing when it comes to selling this type of inventory.
Yeah, keeping the circular economy going. You mentioned true vintage. I want to touch on that really briefly. Like,
Okay.
what's the amount of, okay, I'll say like 1980s and before. I won't include 90s and 2K Y2K. Like, what's how much pre 80s stuff do you actually see in there?
Uh, I used to find a lot more. I started in true vintage. I think we'll get into a lot more of the reasoning behind this, but like kind of when you're in this industry, you do want to be taken seriously. And I know the way that I can appear. So I felt like, especially when I started my own business, I kind of had to come out of the gate really heavy. So I used to find, I would say, 30 to 40% of my inventory was 80 plus. There was some 90s stuff, but I used to sell a lot more true vintage because it was a lot more accessible. There were less people doing this, and there were more people throwing it away, so there was a lot more of it in circulation. But one thing that's happened is why I've had to pivot my business into selling Y2K. Not only is it because it's profitable and it's doing really well, but because a lot of those pieces, they're harder to find because there's so much more newer clothing that's being thrown out. And that's why these items, 80s, prior, they have a little bit of a higher price tag because they're so much harder to find. For every 1,000 Shein items, you'll maybe find one item from, maybe three items from the 80s and two items from the 70s, one
Mhm.
item from the 60s. So, but now I can honestly say that true, like more true vintage items are, I'd say, maybe 10 to 15% of what I take now. So even in the 6 years, it's drastically decreased because it's just a lot harder to find. And I think it might be continuing to be that way.
Yeah, I mean the volume problem for sure of new stuff. And then as you mentioned, like it's gotten more popular doing selling vintage. So further upstream before it ever makes it to the rag house, some of those items might be snapped up a little more readily than they were before. Um, for those in the audience who have any experience with rag houses or just sourcing venues and sharing information, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experiences. If you have any that you want to share, just what we were talking about earlier about that sort of fact that like this stuff is kept a little bit close to the chest, close to the vest. I always mess that up. I don't know. Like it's one of those.
That's
One of those. Would love to hear your experiences if you have any in the comments. Claudia, platforms like Instagram and TikTok, people like you, they've shown us a little bit more about what goes on in these places. When it comes to the public, though, when you started posting this stuff, like what, and we talked a little bit about resellers and like how they feel about this information being out there. But what kind of feedback did you hear from the public when you started posting this stuff?
It's kind of mixed. I think a lot of people are really into it because it does shed a light on the overconsumption of clothing, and that there are places that you can go that you can get lots of inventory. But of course, with all good comes bad. People are like, they're dirty, that's disgusting, who would wear that? And of course, like, how do I get in? So, you're navigating all of these different things, but I think regardless of comments, it's so, like I said, it's so important to show this part of our, like, of the clothing industry. We hear so much about the other part, but something that doesn't get talked about. And that's why it's like, regardless of the comments that I'm going to be getting, I think it's important to show these things and make this known one way or another. So then we understand how much clothing we're throwing away, where clothing does go. It just doesn't wave a magic wand, poof, it does disappears. So I'm just gonna keep going with it, regardless of what people have to say.
Keep doing it. Awesome. I think it's true. I mean, even just thinking about my own social media experience, anybody's social media experience, like my vintage account, it's pretty solidly vintage. But my personal accounts, like, I'm being sold to all the time with new product, new product, new product. And as consumers, that's what we see, right? Like, we see that all the time. We see that first part of the industry that you just talked about, that's the thing that we focus on because that's the thing that the money is behind it to market it to us all the time. And seeing what's happening on the other side. And, I can see why the public might have feelings about it when they come across your content, because it actually makes us look inwards and examine our own behavior. Like, you see a mountain of clothing and you realize, like, that it's been discarded by us. How do you not have a thought about that, as a
Mhm.
consumer when you see that? Holly agreed. It's a little gatekeepy. If someone asks for my contact, I'm happy to pass it on, but it's up to them as they want to take on new clients and that someone can reach the minimums. So good to share behind the curtain, see what true consumerism really looks like. So keep up the good work. Thanks so much. I appreciate that comment. Yeah, I mean, I think as well, when anybody disrupts anything, I mean, this was an industry that operated a certain way for a really long time, and then social media came along and, like, shone a little spotlight on it. So anybody who disrupts and kind of takes the old guard and turns it around on their head a little bit, it is threatening to people, whether it's other people in the industry or whether it's the people who are consuming that content and watching it. But there's really no controlling it, so it's good to roll with it, I think. I think you covered, like, why it's important to break down some of this secrecy around the business. But if you have anything else you want to add, feel free, and I'll just continue on my little sheet. I know we're already at almost an hour.
Wow, we've been
Mm,
I think, like I said, at the end of the day, the more that it's very shocking. I think that's why it has the reaction it does. It is shocking, looking in the mirror and being like, oh man, all of us has contributed to this one way or another. And like I said, I've been doing this for as long as I I still find it very overwhelming and very shocking. But the more that we show these things, the more that we become aware, and the better choices that we make. We as individuals, we can do, we make a difference. And if it means that we buy one more hand instead of hand, I saw a video on Instagram, then I think job well done. Pat ourselves on the
yeah.
back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's never like an all or nothing, especially I
No.
think, like, existing in the world that we're in right now where we are being sold to all the time. It's never, for me anyway. I know some
Mhm.
people may not agree, but, like, I think it's important to do what you can as a consumer, and just make some of those choices as you go. And eventually, once your habits start changing, I find it's a lot easier to make those decisions. So, um, for people watching, if you have any feelings about how social media has changed the transparency in the resale space, especially when it comes to this rag house world, I'd love to hear it. I want to also touch on the fact that this has been a space that has been historically quite male dominated, and
Mhm.
you are a woman. You mentioned earlier that you know how you can appear, and I think what you mean is, like, you're young and you've a woman, and you've got a bubbly personality, and you're maybe not what everybody thinks of when they think of, like, business owner, which I think everybody thinks of old white man. But, like, can you talk about how the space is changing, and why it's been like the way that it is for so long, and how that's played into your own experiences.
So the interesting thing about this is there is a woman that's at my regs, and she's been doing this for a very, very long time. And she said that originally this industry was started and ran by women, women sorting clothes, like fashion and clothing and textiles, I feel like have always been a very feminine thing. And this was always started by women and run by women. And especially within the rag house, the main people going through the actual clothing are women. Like within the work environment, it is a lot more women. But I think when it comes to the picking side, I think everyone thinks of like an old white man, and I'm not an old white man. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah,
So, when I come into these places, and especially over the years where I've gained a lot more experience, I kind of know how to walk the walk and talk the talk, and I understand the culture. It does kind of, shake things up a little bit, and it is unexpected, and you do sometimes get, looked at a certain way and talked to and treated through a different way. But at the end of the day, the more you learn, you just kind of roll those things off of your back. Like when I'm in there, all I want to do is go in, get my job done, give them the amount that I pay that day, and I just want to leave. And, you know, that's my main priority at the end of the day. And any comments or looks or anything, I just try to roll it off my back. And if it means that I break the stereotype of what a vintage picker looks like, what a can do, and bring back that femininity that started this industry of sorting schmata clothing, then I guess I'm doing my job.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, the older guard, the older generation who's in there, but there's also, I mean, these are popular places for streetwear sellers, who a few of them had joined us on this call. Thank you so much. Which, it tends to be, a more male dominated place. So I want to just like highlight that and kind of explain why I asked the question in the first place. So we got some little bit more context there. So
Yeah,
thank you so
there's
much.
space for everybody. It goes
Mhm.
back to, there's room for everybody at the table. The people who are into streetwear, you can have your streetwear and you can pick your streetwear. And, to girls who want to sell Y2K, they're allowed to sell Y2K. And that's why I feel like at the end of the day, there's space for everyone, regardless of gender or identity or anything. At the end of the day, like what we're trying to do is we're just trying to save and sell clothes. So,
Right.
I think all we're trying to do is get in, get out, and that's all we need to leave it for. And any of the politics, let's leave it at the door and come in for what we're trying to do.
Love it. Thanks, Bridget. I saw your comments. Bridget was saying thank you earlier. Um, we talked a bit about quality at these places and the stuff that we're sending to them, buying stuff on Amazon, buying stuff from Temu and Shein. I always hate saying their names because I'm like,
I
am I somehow
know.
like when I see like one like an ad pop up, I don't get them that often, but I'm just like, is it because I accidentally said their name sometime? What do you think
Oh,
about Sorry, what do you think about the future of picking in this kind of ultra fast fashion world that we're in? Like, what are your concerns?
oh, God, who knows? It's so hard to say how things go. I mean, I've already seen just within the small amount of time that I've been in it that there is a lot less vintage clothing, like kind of like prior, because kind of every year that's when we kept, upping the, as the industrial revolution has gone on, things become a lot more technical and faster. And, now Shein can produce 10,000 items in a single day. And I think recently in France, they've banned like Shein hauls and Temu hauls. And I do think that need to go on. And I think we do need to find the value not only within our clothing, but the people that sell us our clothing. I know that secondhand clothing is taking quite the reins in what people are consuming. And I think as long as we can keep pushing that forward and have more people selling secondhand clothing and having clothing swaps and all those types of things more normalized, maybe we can see more of a shift because at the end of the day, these large corporations, they keep doing what they're doing because we're giving them the money and the access to do so. But if we as a society can change that, then I think that we can make a difference. And hey, maybe it might not mean you're getting a Michael Jackson t-shirt from the 80s, but you're, getting your Lululemon yoga pants secondhand. And I think as long as we push that forward, maybe the companies will see that, and maybe they will start to change the quality of their clothing, or maybe they'll start less, or maybe they'll even start buying their clothing back and reselling it and doing that as a collection. So I think we just have to keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully that translates into what companies are doing and make changes. But I think it's easier said than done at the end of
Yeah,
the
it
day.
is. I mean, it is up to the consumer in that way to demand better. But I think that there's something broken. I've said it before on various calls. There's something broken when a consumer can only see the price point. All they can see is I got these pants on Shein for $8.99 or eight. I don't even know what the prices are. Maybe they're $4. I don't know what they are. I don't go on there. But and then to not in your mind compute that you are then going to purchase how many pieces of clothing to either replace those because they have fallen apart after a few wears, or just because you want that kind of quantity, you need to fulfill that trend cycle. It's a big beast, I think,
Yeah.
changing the culture.
Yeah, like I said, easier said and done. But
Yeah.
as I've previously mentioned, even changing one first-hand item to a second-hand item makes a difference. I don't think
Yep.
we should hold people to too high of a standard. As long as they're doing something, then if everyone does something, make that change. So
Yeah.
it's always going to start small.
Yeah. I love it. Um, I want to get a little bit into the vending. I know we're at an hour now, so if you still have some time, let's cover that.
I
I'll leave
do.
the rest.
Let's get into the lightning round.
I always over prepare for these, and I'm like, oh, I have prepared too many questions. So, but if you're still watching us and you're a vendor, I think you may find this section of interest. Um, Buyers, of course, feel free to stick around. But if you don't want to hear about business, I won't be sad if you piece out. For a seller that's interested in getting in, you've talked a little bit about it at various points of the call, but just to kind of summarize, for a seller that's interested in trying to get into one of these places, like what do you suggest they do?
Honestly, it's use Google. A lot of them don't take phone calls. A lot of them don't answer emails. You have to find them. You have to go in. You have to see if they even have space for you. And a lot of luck. I think that's the thing about kind of getting your badge of honor is finding a spot and sticking at it and doing it. And like everything, easier said than done. But do a little bit of research, do a little bit of Googling, and at the end of the day, see if they'll let you in. You never know.
Yeah. I have like visions of being like 15 or 16 with like my first resume, like going into a business, like
Yeah, very
kind
similar.
of like that, right? Like you need to go and put yourself in front of them, right? Because they're not going to communicate with you any other way. So it's the way it's got to be done. We talked about minimum buys, so I'm glad we covered that. How realistic is it for a seller who might be just starting out or at the beginning of their journey to kind of take on the sorting and the labor and the storage of this rag house life that you've been talking about?
I think you need to be prepared to want to buy inventory and also sell inventory, because buying the inventory is a lot of fun. Trust me, the best part. But you need to be able to turn that over as well. And when you get into this, it can be a lot very quickly, and it can add up and it can take up a lot of space. So you need to be able to outlet a lot of product if you want to be able to use this as a business model. And I think, like whether you have wholesale clients that you specifically do bundles for, or you're, a seller on different sites. So like, on Depop or Poshmark or Etsy, and you're turning over a lot of inventory, or you're doing a lot of markets, something that you're going to be able to turn over inventory, so then you can keep going and replenishing that inventory. So it's just kind of being prepared to source a lot of volume. Like if you're a certain like piece by piece kind of person, you're very into like certain things, then I don't think this is the right move. But if you like to grab a lot, sell a lot, and keep turning it over, then it's definitely the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the sell part is key. Like when I think about you and I've seen you in environments, selling environments, you are a seller. Like you are helping customers, you're very hands-on, like, and I think that's needed, like to help move the inventory, like you talked about. You can't just like stand there and
Oh,
hope that it goes
no.
somewhere, right?
You gotta, that's a part of the business. Like when you are selling anything, you need to be able to sell the items. You can have the most amazing pieces, but you need to be there to sell it and push it whatever way that, your magic is able to provide. And I love to sell and I love to interact with people. And it's always something that I've enjoyed. So it does come very naturally to me. And I love doing it. And I love meeting people and hearing their stories about the pieces that they buy. They come back and they tell me how much they love it. And it keeps me going. That's why I'm doing it. It's a wonderful experience. But
Love
it works.
that. I love it. If anybody has questions for Claudia regarding vending, selling, going to a reg house, now's the time because we're going to wrap up pretty soon. Um, can you just touch on the outcomes from a revenue perspective of bulk sourcing like this and compared to cherry picking at a thrift store or even getting bales delivered to you, which is a whole kind of other wholesale thing?
Yeah. Just from like the perspective that I have, it's like you are getting a lot of inventory in bulk. And it also depends on what you're selling. So when you're selling a lot of lighter items, you do get a lot more items for that certain price. So you can sell them, I find, a little bit lower just because you are getting so many of them for that like one set price. And when you have to sell them for a little bit more. But, like I said, as long as you're kind of like turning over the inventory, you can make your money back a lot quicker than individual pieces because you're getting, three t-shirts for $10, but then maybe you're getting one t-shirt for $10 at a thrift store, So if you can sell three t-shirts and you know how to sell three t-shirts, then it's better to get that instead of individual pieces. But everyone is different just based on the way that they run their businesses and how they price things. There's so much that goes into it.
Yeah. Do you think it's easier to scale doing it your way? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because of the volume.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're able to replenish. Like I have this one location, it's Boho Tchotchke. I restocked today, and then I get a text message from the owner, Joy, and she's like, "You need to stock tomorrow." Like, oh, oh,
Amazing.
shoot. I
Good
need to
for
go.
you and good for Joy too.
So now at least I can go in because I'm picking tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I can go in and now I know that I have to get inventory for that store. I mean, it's going to be a crazy turnaround because I need to get it to her by the end of the day tomorrow, but at least I know that I'm able to do that instead of going into a thrift store and if there's nothing at the thrift store, then I'm doomed.
Yeah, yeah. Where do you, so you have all these locations. Do you have like an overstock area too? Like
A
storage or
little
something?
one.
Yeah.
I two bins and I have a bunch of fall stuff in there. And
Okay.
I have a small storage unit, but right now it's actually on the emptier side. I'm slowly starting to get ready for fall. So I'm going to start going through a lot of my fall items and cashing those out. So that's a task in itself. But I have like a small area, but thankfully I'm in a position where a lot of inventory is turning over. So I don't need too much space to hold everything.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, you do tons of digging.
A lot of
Tips for finding the gems when you're looking at that mountain.
Oh gosh, what are the best ones? Always learn your fabrics, and also learn what they feel like. One of my little weird hobbies is I love to go into like full renter, like really expensive stores, and I like to just touch all the fabrics. Like go to the row, touch every single sweater and every single shirt and every single pair of jeans, and learn what their tags look like. So then when you're going in there, even if it's not an item from the row, you understand what an item from the row feels like. Like their sweaters go for like I think like 1,400 to 1,500, which is,
Mhm.
hey, it's the row. I can't knock it. But if you feel that, then you understand what a very high quality garment feels like. And then learning the tags, learn old tags, learn new tags, and just educate yourself on clothing as a whole. So then when you see and find items or you have an idea of items and you see them when you're picking, then you kind of know what they are, and you don't even need to double guess it sometimes. And it all takes time, but also last one is just makes perfect. You're gonna pick things that aren't gonna move, that no one's gonna like, and you're gonna sometimes buy three or four of them, and you're like, why did I take this thing? Oh my, I never want to see it again. But as you keep doing it and you start to see what people are interested in, and you keep track of that, and you understand what to look for, and you get a little bit better every time.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I mean, knowledge is power,
Knowledge
obviously.
is
And
power,
yeah,
absolutely.
then you can make those decisions on the fly, like you were talking about at the very beginning. For anybody who missed it, talking about the line, this recording will be posted to Instagram shortly after this, so you can catch up. You talked a little bit about items that aren't necessarily sellable right away, like if an item's stained and you still think it'll sell, and tie dyeing it. Is there anything else you do to items in terms of repairing or repurposing, or is there a point where you're just like, I'm going to leave this?
It really depends. I find that I try to take items that are as close to perfect as possible. But if an item, like, like when I see an item and there's really, really bad staining that we just can't do anything about, like some, especially on like vintage crew necks and there's sometimes a lot of yellowing around the collar. And even though you can dye it or you can try your best to clean it up, sometimes they're just so beyond repair, or holes that are just in the wrong places
Mhm.
that you can't, fix or patch. Like sometimes they're just unsavable. One thing I really struggle with is like cigarette smoke. That's a really hard one to get out. If
Yeah.
anyone has any recommendations, it really like digs into the clothing. So, there are items that we do toss if we just feel it's something that it's just beyond what we can do. But there's always, like with any, for example, I get a lot of juice on tour. If
Mm.
there are items that we can't save, we try to repurpose parts of it. So if there's like the J zipper, we'll try to take it off and repurpose it on another jacket. Or I've even taken the rhinestone patches off of things and kept them, so then I can repurpose other items and put them in a better place. And, trying to save as many items and reuse as many items and repurpose is always the goal. But some things just are just too far beyond. Fake leather jackets, especially, there's nothing you can do
Uh,
about that.
yeah,
But
once they start crumbling, they're gone.
yeah, they're done. So
Yeah.
I love to save everything, but sometimes there's only so much that you can do.
Yeah. I mean, vegan leather has its issues.
Oh my goodness. I actually made a video about this. I still need to edit it, but I made a video like, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, but vegan leather is not the option, folks. It's not. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's not sustainable. It just hangs around
No.
forever and won't decompose ever. So,
Starts at 20 to 30 years for it to start decomposing. And
yeah.
I Googled and it said that it can be around for at least a century, which I think is about 100 years. And that's
Yeah.
that's a
That's,
really scary thing to think of.
yeah, longer than any of us will be alive, I think.
Yeah,
So,
that makes it
yeah.
feel around long after any of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Claudia, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. So much insight shared. Do you have anything that you want to add to close off that you haven't been able to say?
Honestly, I feel like I've said a lot. Just get out there, save some clothing, have some fun, and just enjoy the ride at the end of the day. I think that's where I kind of want to end things.
Yeah, awesome. No, it's a really great conversation. Appreciate your time. Some
Yeah,
thank yous in the
wonderful.
comments. Thanks everyone for coming in. Um, Definitely check out Claudia's I was going to say Facebook page, Instagram page. I don't know why Facebook. We're on Instagram. Cloud Girl Vintage. She was talking about she's got info on fabrics. The vegan leather one's still in editing, but you've got lots of other stuff. You're educating people from the floor. Really great content. So congratulations on everything you've done
Thank
so far
you.
for the industry. It's been really awesome to watch it all happen. And just a reminder to everybody, check out what we have going on at the Vintage Seeker. You can see it on my page. We've got a couple of more events happening this month, and everything else at the link in my bio. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
out. Oh,
you.
cigarette smoke solution before we jump off. Thank you. It
Oh,
is mint.
wonderful.
Soak and strong resolve water and vinegar solution for 30 minutes plus, effective on most material. Perfect.
Ooh,
Thank
okay.
you.
I'll have to
You
try
got to
that.
try that, Claudia. Report back.
I can write that one down, try it, and see what happens.
Yes, if you're watching the replay, drop into the comments, let us know, and I'm sure Claudia will answer any questions that you have after this. You can DM her. So until next time, thank you so much for coming out. Thanks, Claudia, and thanks to all of
Problem.
you for hanging out with us tonight. So
Bye.
take care. Have a great night. Bye.